Good afternoon, viewers, and welcome back to your weekly dose of youth news. Generation C is the show that tells you why the zone, which is inserted in our daily publication, Namibian Sun, Republican, and Allgemeine Zeitung, is a perfect read on a Tuesday. My name is Jusisha Shipena, and I'll be your host for today's show. In today's show, we'll be talking about youth in our youth paper, and we'll also be joined by Stephen from the Office of the First Lady, and we'll be speaking about mental health awareness, since on the 10th of October, it will be Mental Health Day. Now, yesterday we celebrated World Teachers' Day around the globe, and we can really say that our teachers were our heroes and our heroines during this global pandemic, with the ups and downs in the education sector. So we visited Windhoek Technical High School here in Windhoek and asked some of the learners what are some of the things they would do for their teachers to show them appreciation, and here's what they had to say.
My name is Nathan Peterson. I'm in grade 8. Today I'm going to talk about how you can appreciate your teachers. You can appreciate your teachers by listening to them in class, doing what they tell you, help them out with something they need, be a responsible learner, and yeah, just help them out with a lot of stuff. That's how you can really appreciate your teacher.
Good afternoon, my name is Maria Johannes, and on my point of view on how to appreciate our teachers is we should always come to school every day and always respect them, because if it wasn't for them, our future would not be as bright as it is now. Thank you.
My name is Harageib from grade 8E. For me personally, I would like to tell you how to appreciate a teacher on a daily basis. How to appreciate your teacher. I think you should appreciate your teacher by doing your homework, behaving in class, and listen to your teacher.
My name is Abraham Shimanda. I'm an elder at Windhoek Technical High School. Our teachers do a lot of work to give us good academic results. So us as LRCs, we plan something as in on every teacher's birthday, we LRCs celebrate their birthday, we sing for them and give each individual a gift. But from my side, I think the best way to appreciate our teachers is giving them good academic results.
I'm the deputy head girl of HTs. Different gestures how to appreciate a teacher is by saying thank you to them after classes. When you walk past by them, you can give them a sweet surprising them on a daily basis. You can also appreciate them by doing their homework when they ask you to do it, and that's what they expect you to do.
My name is Sean Pluton, and I'm the head boy of HTS. Teachers do a lot of work that go unnoticed, so the way we could help them is be more disciplined in class. We could actually keep up with our work to make everything easier for them, and we could show them once in a while that we really appreciate them by telling them that the lesson was good and what they could improve on their lesson. Yes, that's what I think.
Now, on our front page, we have the lovely Ndelipewa Ndapandula Mungoba, and this 19-year-old law student at the University of Namibia, who remains hungry to make a change in the life of the Namibian girl child. This young individual has won the South African Trust Adolescent Activism Award. And to read more about Mungoba, please grab yourself a copy of The Zone, and you'll be able to see her journey towards making a difference in her community. And in other news, we have Lillian Shaningwa, the Deputy Director of General Services and Examination Administration at the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture, says that the final stages for preparation for exams have been made, so it's in its final stages. But however, should a candidate be infected with the COVID-19 pandemic, they will be allowed to write in a hospital or under quarantine facilities with the supervision of a general health worker as an invigilator, and they would be trained to do that according to the Ministry of Education's guidelines, and should a candidate not be fit to write exam, they will then write their external exam the following year, which is next year, 2021. And as we speak, higher level second language literature exams are already written, and oral exams for French would already started on the 15th of September. However, the oral exams for the rest of the languages are to start on the 21st of October, which then will be followed by the written exams from the 9th of November to the 18th of December. Now, in other news as well, last week the Ministry of Education, Arts and Culture, in partnership with Namibia government, the Namibian government, pardon me, United Nations Education Scientific Cultural Organization, that's UNESCO, and the European Union launched the Intellectual Property and Local Content Namibia project. Now, this project entails that it's a fast-thinking project to interact, and it's aimed at benefiting cultural and creative industry, which falls under the global EU and UNESCO initiative, supporting new regulatory frameworks to strengthen the cultural and creative industry to promote South Africa cooperation. Now, on our focus feature for the week touches on the works that the Ministry of Education has been doing to push for inclusive education, and one of them being that they have introduced the pre-vocational skills course for senior students who could not cope in the academic stream, and will be offering technical subjects through the e-learning platform. And this has said to be that it is a challenging space because 60% of the work is done through practical work and 35% is done theoretically. And that's it from our news from the papers. We'll now be heading over to our interview that we'll be having with Stephen from the Office of the First Lady, and we'll be speaking about what are some of the loopholes that are there when it comes to mental health in our communities. What are some of the things our peers can do, our parents can do? So here we go. We're crossing over to our interview. In studio, we are joined by Bernardus, and he's from the Office of the First Lady, and we'll be talking about mental health. And since we are celebrating Mental Health Day, World Mental Health Day, on the 10th of October, which is this Saturday, we just want to touch on the topic. And with the increase of suicides amongst young people here in Namibia, we just want to shed a little bit of light on how communities can show up for their children, for their peers, for their neighbors and all that. So welcome to the studio, Bernardus.
Thank you, Justicia. Good to be here with you.
So we're just going to dive into it. How can parents, teachers and community drive the start to open a conversation on mental health issues without negative criticism taking place and creating a safe haven for young individuals?
That's an excellent question. And when you talk about mental health, I think there's a lot of misconceptions around what mental health is and mental illness, right? So a lot of times when people hear of mental health, they normally just go to mental illness. So, and there's a whole lot of stigma, especially in our communities, around mental illness. What we do is we shun people with mental illness to the side. We kind of want them to be locked up in an institution. We make fun of them. We don't understand what they're going through. And that has an impact on when somebody actually seeks for help. Now, mental health, it's about your mental well-being, right? So a child's mental health has to do with how are they feeling about themselves, how are they feeling about the environment they're finding themselves in. Are they comfortable where they are? Is where we are and how we're feeling, our emotions in congruence? Are they in alignment with our mind? And so we can all have mental health challenges at different points in our lives. For example, stress, right? Anxiety. When it's, for example, exams. I know exams are coming up in October now for some of our young people. When you, for example, go through a relationship breakup, that can have a mental impact on you. When your parents are going through a divorce, or when you see gender-based violence in your society or in your home, that has a mental health impact. But we don't speak about mental health from an entirety of mental health, as opposed to only focusing on mental illness. And I think it's important for us all to recognize that all of us can have mental health challenges, and that we can always destigmatize our conversation by actually engaging and saying, how are you doing? Are you okay? What is going on? How's your mind? Are you sleeping well, right? Because those help you to understand what the mental health health state of somebody is. And so to have a destigmatized conversation with parents is to be able to understand that when a child is saying that I'm feeling stressed or I don't feel well, it is not because they're looking for attention or seeking for attention primarily. It's to be able to recognize what are the patterns in their lives that are starting to shift and change. Like, are they not sleeping well? Are they not eating well? Are they not enjoying the stuff they used to, for example, like sports, etc.? And then how do you be able to help parents to be able to move kids forward? And I think what's also important for parents, finally, is that because we don't deal with our own mental health challenges as parents and as adults, we almost project that onto our children as well, and to the young people, and then we almost just say, just be strong, right? Like, just get over it.
Just get over it.
But it's important for us to help us to go through the emotions and to deal with what is going on within our minds and in our emotions.
Okay, I like the fact that you mentioned environment, and since we are speaking about environment, there might be young people out there who stay in an environment that might not be fruitful for them, and they do not have the capacity to leave that environment. What are some of the implications of being in a toxic environment on a child, and what are some of the coping mechanisms that you can maybe give to them when they're in this kind of situation?
So, realize that COVID-19, as I'll speak to it, also is a pandemic that we're experiencing, as we all know. But when you think about issues like poverty, GBV, those are also pandemics that have been running concurrently in this country. So when you're faced with cycles of poverty, when you're faced with cycles of unemployment, and all this environment where people are suffering, right, at different levels, and you don't know what to do, when you start to feel hopeless, you start to feel desperate, that can have a toll on your mental health because you can't see a way out. And how we can create a space for young people to be able to cope around this toxic environments that they find themselves in is really to recognize that this is not normal. We should not normalize abnormal behavior. We must not normalize this level of inequality. And we should be able to create a space for young people to be able to express their frustrations, their anger, their disappointment, right? To be able to express what they're going through in that moment, what they're seeing in the environment, and be able to help them to almost move them from point A to point B, where point B is almost a better place that they can imagine in what they want to do. And one of the ways we can do coping is through our be-free engagements, for example. What we always tell young people is use art, right? So whether it's drama, music, use that to express your emotions. Talk to your friends, talk to your peers about it. Because you always, when you're going through a mental health challenge or when you're just feeling down and stuff like that, what happens is we self-isolate because we feel like I'm the only one going through this, nobody will understand. And actually when you start to raise this issue with those around you, your peers, your teachers, etc., you actually realize that you're actually not alone. There are other people that are going through something similar, and therefore you can be able to encourage one another. There is fantastic services such as Lifeline Child and through the 116 line, the 106 line, that provide counseling support to young people where you can call in for free. And it's leveraging and using those services so that you can be able to go through it. And it's thinking about the simple things in your community, right? Doing sports, going out for an afternoon soccer match. I know, like, kids these days, they don't play Amagus anymore. But those kind of things are part of just keeping your mental health strong, right? Like outdoor activities, physical activities, going for walks, reading helps your mind to almost declutter what you're going through. So those are simple things that you can do. So sometimes you can't change the circumstances in the environment that you're in, but what you can do is, in your own personal capacity, you can kind of create a safe space for yourself and those people around you. And it's to check in on each other, right? And say, like, hey, Justicia, how are you doing, man? I didn't see you for the last 2 days. What's going on? How's your family, etc. And really that lending an ear to one another, and that helps us to be able to deal with some of those challenges, especially in a toxic space, and realizing that a lot of these issues are layered on top of each other, right? So it's if your mother is unemployed, your father is unemployed, that has an impact in terms of their contribution. That has a mental toll on them, and then they can put that stress on the children. If there is gender-based violence in the home, the kids are observing that has a mental strain both on the survivor and the perpetrator and the kids that are faced with that, and it's being able to deal with those kind of things. And some of those circumstances we cannot immediately, for example, change, but what we need to be able to create is seek help, seek services that can actually deal with that. and create a space that is actually healthy for you and create that environment, a little bit of a bubble for you that is also be able to save as well.
So I know there's innovations such as Be Free movement by the First Lady, who are out there to do the most and be there for the Namibian child. And there has been an increase for the past month in suicide cases in Namibia. What are some of the things the society can do to help a Namibian child see that whatever they are going through can be solved in any other way rather than taking suicide as an option?
It's a very difficult conversation around suicide, and I think it's a result of compounding challenges that young people are facing, right? So and I think I want us to just challenge that idea that suicide is kind of like somebody just doing it because they want to get other people's attention, or they're just using it as a way to get sympathy. I don't think that it is. I think it's a layered number of issues that brings somebody to that point. And so I think what we need to think about is how do we have preventative programs in place, right? And what we've found through our Be Free dialogues and engagements is that young people are saying, I'm using alcohol as a coping mechanism, right? Because of the challenges that are around me. I'm using drugs, I'm using substances to help me cope. I feel powerless, I feel hopeless around the situation, and therefore suicide seems to be the best way out. So what we need to be thinking about is how do we strengthen coping mechanisms? What other alternatives can we give young people? So as I said in the beginning, it's issues like having physical activity. It's about creating a support system that is able to help young people to actually lean and find the services they need. Is linking them to mental health professionals, are people that were actually studied and are qualified to actually deal with these issues, social workers, psychologists, mental health practitioners that we can actually refer to as parents, as concerned citizens that we can engage. So sometimes we don't know how to help someone, right? So it's being able to find the necessary services that that person needs and refer them there, because there are people that can actually support and help them. And I think when we talk about suicide, the issues around suicide is even that you're seeing more and more younger kids attempting suicide or having suicide ideation. So and it's signs to watch out for when somebody's talking about death a lot, or they're feeling like I can't live anymore, I don't feel like I'm strong enough, I feel like there's nothing for me here. When we start to hear those kind of conversations, we should take them seriously. We cannot just brush them off and saying it's just this person just complaining for complaining.
You're too young, you don't have problems.
Exactly, you're too young, you don't understand, right? But it's really acknowledging that, because I think from about 9-10 years old, young kids start to actually have an understanding around what death is and suicide, etc. Even though they may not be able to fully grasp the consequences and the results thereof, they have a kind of a sense of what it is. And I think it's important for us to be able to check out for those signs and refer where it's necessary. And I know that for a lot of parents, it's single homes, it's many, you pretty much one breadwinner in the home that has to take care of so many people. And sometimes you can also feel like, am I doing enough, right? And I want to encourage us and encourage parents that also may feel overwhelmed and saying, like, I don't know if I'm doing enough for my child, to just check in whenever it's possible. Get in your neighbors, get in family, friends, cousins, etc. that can just check in on your child if you don't have the time and capacity to do so. But really strengthen that system so that we are not shocked, because I think after the fact we're like, oh my goodness, what happened? What happened? I thought Stephen was actually happy, I thought he was actually fine. How did this come about? But it's a result of compounding challenges that has been going on that has almost led us to that place. And I think it's for us to break that cycle there before it gets to suicide.
Yeah, as you said, like, if you look back then, there were communities that stood together. So now you have a household, but the neighbor doesn't support what is going on into this house, instead of them helping their neighbor. So in this time, how can we change the process of creating mental health awareness, but take action after awareness has been created to make sure that we don't have any loopholes in this regard?
So I think it's realizing that it's a community issue, right? As you have raised it there. I think all of us have to play our part. There are, and it's recognizing whose role is to do what. To do what, we have the mental health practitioners that provide the information around what the issue is. And I think what we've done well, and what we need to continue to do, is take some of these conversations into our local languages, take them on radio, and I think a conversation like this is fantastic to be able to help raise that awareness, so that people just understand that it is part of our lives and we need to be able to deal with it. It's not a question of it's only happens to, it's a white people problem or it's a problem that's outside Namibia. It's actually our issue that we need to be able to confront. The second thing is, as a community, we have to realize what are the opportunities that are there for young people to participate, right? So how do you facilitate spaces for young people to be able to have a safe, frank, honest conversations about what's going on in their lives? Because I think what parents take for granted is that kids see what's going on, right? They see what's happening in the family, they see what's going on, how you respond, how you deal with things, even though they may not say it out loud. So they see, and this has an effect, and because they don't have a place to vent and get those things off their chest, they almost have to assume this adult responsibility of trying to deal with the complexities of life, right? So I think it's creating those spaces for young people to feel safe and speak about what their challenges is without judgment. And I think that's part of what we're doing in our Be Free engagements, is that saying we have judgment-free, frank, honest conversations to say, speak your minds, tell us what's going on, right? Even if your view is diverging to where we want to at least create a space where you are able to express that, and so that we can help you, right? And then the third thing is issues around just creating community facilities, right? I know the city of Windhoek started to do these open gyms and stuff like that across the city. I think we need to increase more of those infrastructures where young people can be able to just let off steam in those kind of spaces. And then it's thinking about how do we deal with those bigger societal issues that we seek alcohol as, for example, as a coping mechanism. We need to be able to find alternative ways to cope with the challenges that we're having. Alcohol, substance abuse is not the way, because what it just does is completely increases your susceptibility to mental illness later on. So it's really finding the positive ways to be able to cope with these challenges and not using negative substances such as alcohol and drugs, for example, to cope. And then I think what we need to do in a solid way is to really think about how do we come together to move the conversation to actually say we are a country that is dealing with trauma in our hearts and in our lives. There's trauma from our past, realizing that we've only been independent for 30 years. There's a lot of trauma that is still there as a result of our historical positioning. There's trauma as a result of what is happening in our homes, whether it's GBV, whether it's rape, whether it's alcohol abuse, whether it's unemployment. That is having impact on our mental health, and it's really dealing with those root causes as well, so that we're able to move forward. Because until we deal with the root issues, we're only going to be dealing with the symptoms. So it's really trying to understand some of those inequalities as well, and how do we strengthen that from a systematic level.
Okay, that's interesting. So we are moving into a digital world, especially with the whole COVID-19. We have seen that things can be done digitally by the click of a button. And if you are on social media like Instagram and Twitter, you would see that young people actually use these platforms to voice what they feel. How do we then encourage our parents not to see social media as a negative thing? Because they will be like, oh, it's that phone. It's that phone. It's that phone. Meanwhile, that phone is giving the strength that child needs. There's someone out there in the other world giving that child the strength they need. How do we then encourage parents to not see, maybe see both sides of the story and not just be like, no, it's that phone, you're chatting too much, and all that.
No, for sure. And it's a catch-22, because I think parents feel disconnected to their child when you pretty much just go into your room and you're on your phone. It's like, who is my child? Where is my child? You know what I mean? And it's an escape, right? So it's recognizing that it's a tool, and that's what it should be. It should be a tool that helps your child, as opposed to a tool that continues to wrap your child around its finger. Digital literacy is important for parents. Even for myself, I look at my younger siblings, for example, who are now in their 15, 16 years old. At my age of 30, like, it feels like I'm literally like 100 years apart from where they are, right? They're talking about stuff that I don't have no clue about. So I think it's important for us to recognize our own ignorance as parents, even us who think we're young. But to realize that where are the young people at, what are the spaces and platforms that they're using, and leveraging those and saying, okay, cool. here is the space, I think use it, that's fantastic. Have an open conversation around it.
Yeah.
Without a question of like, oh yeah, what are you doing on the phone? Like, it shouldn't come from a critical, I'm coming for you situation, as opposed to, let's have an open conversation. Oh, I saw you're on your phone. What are you doing? Like, what are you using these days? I heard about TikTok. What is that about?
Yeah.
So ask from a curious perspective, because kids always love to teach, right?
Yeah.
So if they feel like, oh, this person is curious and I'm the expert in this issue, they'll be more likely to open up. As opposed to you say, but what are you doing on that thing? Then kids even just shut down. They're like, this parent of mine or this Gazi, I'm not going to even entertain this situation. I'm going to talk to my friends. Then the second thing is also in that honest conversations to recognize that there are risks online as well. We feel though the digital movement that online violence has increased, right?
Yeah,
so issues like cyberbullying, grooming, we're finding cases of that in our beefries as well, where young people have said, when we started to speak about these conversations, saying that I'm also experiencing grooming, I'm also experiencing cyberbullying, sextortion, etc. We had a beefry digital just 2 weeks ago in talking around those issues, and what we find is that what is in the digital space is a reflection of what's in society. So if there's already gender-based violence in society, it translates itself on the digital space. If there is somebody who's toxic in the way they speak to others, they're going to translate it there, from offline to online. And it's helping young people to deal with that and also recognize the risk thereof, and realizing that online abuse for young people has an impact more severely than offline abuse, because all of a sudden your phone becomes the object of your abuse. So when you go to bed, it's with you. When you're like walking in the street, it's with you. When you're living, it's in your pocket, it's with you the whole time. Whereas offline abuse, when you, for example, you get bullied in school, after school you cannot continue with your life.
You can go home and like everything's fine.
But now you have this abuse that's going on your phone, and that has an impact on their mental health, because if I'm afraid to talk to my mom and dad about it, or close people around it, around the violence that I'm experiencing online, because I'm afraid they're going to take my phone, then I keep quiet, hold on to this abuse, it continues to have, and then it spreads because people share this, they make fun of it, they start in groups, etc. You carry all this trauma in yourself, and then eventually you have a mental breakdown, right? So I think it's important for us to constantly engage young people and say, hey, when that happens, it is not your fault. Let's have a conversation around it. Let's realize that it's abuse. Let's abuse that it's actually a crime, and actually start to bring these things to the fore. Because I think what happens is social media in the digital space is in the shadows at the moment, and nobody quite knows exactly what's going on and the impact thereof. And I think once we have that open conversation, we can be able to better help young people to deal with it. So it's a pros and cons.
It has pros and cons. And I like that you spoke about cyberbullying. So we have things called famous socialites on social media. So they do things to get followers and kind of have their attention. How do we then encourage peer-to-peer education and being there for one another, and just not doing things because you need the followers, you need the attention? Meanwhile, you don't know that the next person you're doing this to is suffering, or it might create more harm than what you think, because for you it's, oh, I'm getting what I need, but the next person is getting hurt. How do we then encourage for young people to like stand together and not break each other down?
No, that's an excellent question, and I think that's a conversation around bystander intervention, right? So it's recognizing that if you're the one that's perpetuating this violence, us who are not necessarily the victims of that violence have to speak out and call you out on it and say, what you're doing is not right, it's not cool, right? We must actually call it out. And I think that's the issue around violence and silence. If we're silent and we keep quiet, then we're implicitly also engaging. We're also implicitly violators of from ourselves. So it's recognizing that if I don't speak up and defend and actually correct this issue, then I'm also part of the violence, and I'm also part of the perpetrators, because I'm not calling it out, right? So I think it's recognizing that we have a power. So if this person is looking for followers and they value my followership, I must be able to call that out and say, hey, this language that you're using is not fine, right? It's not okay. Or the way that you spoke to this person is not cool, right? And in us doing that and regulating one another, it is much more impactful than me trying to speak to one or two people that are in the situation. But it's really saying, as a community, we have to almost check each other. We're going to check ourselves and say, hey, the way that you responded there, not cool. Apologize, engage. Whether it's on the platform in the public space, or if you inbox a person and directly and say, hey, please deal with this. I think those are some of the ways that we can, as bystanders who are seeing what's going on, can get engaged and get involved. And I think what we try to do is, because we're afraid of that happening to us, and the person then turning around and attacking us, we kind of just shy away. And I think that's not a fair position. I think it's important for us to have the courage to be able to build that community shield and say, let's rather protect those who are victims, so that we don't empower the bullies online to continue to perpetrate violence against those who are in that space.
Okay, I'm so sad to say that this has come to the end of our studio session. I hope the viewers have learned a thing or two in terms of standing up not only for your peers, but for your neighbor, for your communities, even your parents. You could get a thing or two from Stephen, pardon me. And join us again next time on our Generation C show as we bring you all things youth.